Hi team, well today I am speaking with Adrian Cox, the GM of White's Powersports New Zealand, and Adrian and I have known each other since 2010. I had the really great pleasure of meeting him along with Keith and Kine way back when I started working with Whites. And one of the things that struck me about Adrian is that he's got this really great ability to build rapport and get on with people and build trust straight away. He certainly did that with me. So one of the things I wanted to do today was pick Adrian's brain as the GM on his leadership challenges and his team, how he goes about some of those things, and also a little bit about how he establishes that trust and that rapport with his people. So welcome, Adrian.
Thank you very much.
Great. I'd like to hear a little bit first of all about your personal history and how you came to be at Whites, how long you've been here, and a little bit about your journey.
Sure. I've been at Whites for 11 years, which is a very long time, given my history, my career history. I think the longest place I worked at before this was 3 years, so it's been a real journey and a real learning curve. I started in men's fashion in a small menswear store in Queen Street back in 1988. And that's led me into a sales path in the fashion industry, motorcycle industry, and the photocopier industry.
And so you started Whites 11 years ago. Tell me about your journey through Whites. Where did you start?
So I started with Whites. I actually took. I was working in an industry that I didn't really like. I wasn't being rewarded personally, and I needed to make a change. And so this came up, and my passion for motorcycling has driven me into this career through working in motorcycle dealerships.
Yes.
And in 2007 this position came up, which was a sales manager's role.
Right.
So I took that and I really haven't looked back. I moved from sales into sales and marketing, and more recently 4 years ago took over the GM's role.
Okay, how many people in your team?
So we've got 42 staff, the bulk of which are here at head office in Hamilton.
Yes.
We also have 4 reps on the road right throughout the country.
Okay, and you've got quite a diverse team, don't you? So what's sort of your biggest challenge around leading and managing such a large team of diverse people from a wide variety of backgrounds and ages? You've got millennials, you've got digitals, dinosaurs, you've got all sorts. What's the biggest challenge there, and how do you deal with that?
Absolutely. The diversity of the people that you're working with is the greatest challenge for me.
Right.
From the sales team to an administration team to a purchasing team to a warehouse team, and not wanting to put boxes around them, but they do contain different people and of like-minded people. So
Sure.
Adjusting my way and the way in which I deal with them and show them the respect and the courtesy that they deserve
Yes.
is often different.
Yes.
And like anybody, we can have our good days and our bad days, and it's just understanding that everyone can have those. Taking a breath when I start feeling agitated,
Yes.
and just understanding that they might be having an off day or an off week, or they might have pressures outside, but it's definitely it's a respect and a trust thing for me to get on with everybody, and for them to respect and trust what I'm trying to do.
And how do you create that? Because you've certainly got a great retention sits right here. I mean, your people have been here for years and years and years and years, and any new hires tend to stay. How do you create that trust? What's the secret to creating that culture of trust? Because, as I'm always saying, trust is the key that you're trying to create. So how do you do it?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a line that you brought up a little while ago, which I've lived by, and using your courtesies, your please and your thank yous,
Right.
treating people with the respect that I would hope that they would give me.
Sure.
And helping them and being there for them where they've got a problem, and I can listen to them without prejudice. Get all the facts and understand where they're coming from, allow them to vent without arcing up back at them, and just understanding, sharing in these successes as well, so on the positive side of things. So hopefully it's a trust thing that runs deep. Can't win them all, but yeah.
Okay, well, you're certainly doing very well, and you just mentioned the whole concept of centeredness, which is something I talk about a lot. It's the number one trait that people want in a leader. So how do you, because a lot of leaders tend to arc up, as you say, or take things personally and react versus respond. So how do you develop that over the years, Adrian? How do you keep that centeredness so that your emotional state stays about here and it's not going up and down?
Sure, it definitely goes up and down.
So how do you control that?
I guess over a period of time in sales, dealing with so many different people and so many different circumstances, especially in retail. Retail gave me a great grounding because you're dealing with a person that you've never met before. So you need to click with them in a very short space of time. back in the day, I was selling menswear to politicians and high-ranking businessmen, all the way down to somebody who was going for their first job interview.
Sure.
So I guess learning that craft through there, understanding when I'm feeling off, that maybe I need to take a little bit more time before I respond. If I feel like I'm going to react, just don't say anything, and giving the situation some time, and if it's just not the right time, put it on ice and come back to it.
It's amazing you talk about retail, because that's kind of like my early day background as well, and I don't want to say it here, but every leader should do retail, right?
Yeah.
You see everybody, you talk to everybody, you see all sorts of people, and it certainly does develop your skills, I think, later on for dealing with those conversations and those challenging people in your team. In terms of your leadership challenge, what's your biggest leadership challenge?
Biggest leadership challenge for me is getting everybody on the same path at the same time. We've got a goal, we've got a vision, we want to get here, and that direction comes from the top, above me, and then through me, through our management team, and then how to get everybody believing in what we're doing.
How do you do that?
Trusting in what we're doing.
That's a great point. That's everybody wants to know how to do that. So how do you get them all aligned and rowing in the same direction to maximum capacity?
You can only do your best. You can only communicate, and if you haven't done that first step that we were talking about, which was gaining trust and earning their respect, if you don't have that, you could preach whatever you wanted to preach, and they're not going to listen to you because they don't trust you. So I hope that I've built that to that point where I can stand in front of the team and say, hey, look, this is where we're going, this is what we're doing. It may look like something different, but it's not. So really, you've just got to have, I think, the trust and the respect.
Fantastic. I couldn't agree more. In terms of the biggest leadership mistake you've ever made, what would be the biggest mistake over the years you think you made in your leadership role?
God, there would have been a lot, I'm sure. Probably the biggest ones you don't even know about.
Sure.
But for me, the ones that cost you your good staff, or the ones that cost you your good clients, to me that typically comes through a lack of understanding of where they might be at. Let's just talk about staff. If you've got a key staff member and you haven't been engaged or aware of where they're at, they might be genuinely unhappy, and if you haven't been talking or communicating with them or haven't picked that up, and before you know it, you've got a resignation letter on your desk, and you've lost a key member of staff. That's a massive thing to a business, is finding good people. So when you lose one, that's, to me, the biggest thing.
And what's the biggest learning out of there that you can share with some other leaders around, having been through that experience, so you've made an adjustment? What would that learning and adjustment be that you can share with them?
Sure, absolutely. Regular communication and meetings. I meet with my team every week in certain parts of the business, but every month for the whole company.
Yes.
So definitely making sure that your line managers are meeting with their teams every week. So you've got that communication coming up right from the very bottom. You're hearing any tidbits or any information that could alert you to an issue with a certain person.
Yes.
And if that person's of real value, as a GM, I'll step in straight away and open up some dialogue and give them the opportunity to share where they're at and hopefully be able to help them through it.
Fantastic. You heard it here first, team. Anybody that says that meetings aren't important or that are rubbish doesn't know what they're talking about. Meetings are the connection, heartbeat of your company, but you've just got to have the right meetings and have them effectively. As far as the most difficult conversation you have to have as a leader, what is that conversation and how do you approach it?
In the last 4 years, having to let some staff go, and they're good people. In my view, all people are good people.
Right.
They all have their pros and their cons, and if I don't like somebody, that doesn't mean that they're not good at their job and they're not good as part of the team.
Sure.
So probably the hardest things that I had to do recently was the end to somebody's career that had been with us for over 20 years.
Wow, how did you deal with that? That's a difficult conversation.
It was a really difficult conversation, and there were multiple aspects to it, and I'm still personal friends with that person now.
Right.
But it really tore me up to actually have to or be put in that position where I had to deal with it.
Right.
So in the end, again, it came down to open and honest communication, and all that I could do was sit down and say, this is where the problem is. these are the opportunities for you. The ball is in your court. You know, we've discussed the situation, we've discussed the problems, and we've discussed the outcomes. From here, you need to adjust and go from there. And unfortunately, it didn't go that way, and it got to a point where I had to take disciplinary action. And it was the hardest thing I had to do, most challenging thing I had to do.
Right, and if you were to give someone a bit of advice, if there's some leaders watching us out there and they've got that conversation they have to approach, what would you tell them in terms of helping them have that conversation in a really good way? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, you just have to have, I just put myself in that person's shoes and try and understand where they might be at, show them the respect and the dignity that they deserve when they're going to go through a really tough time. No point in making them feel any worse than what they probably are. And just staying steady, so they know what they're going to be communicating with.
That's great advice. If you were talking to a young leader, like or an aspiring leader, someone in their 20s or early 30s, what would be the bit of advice you'd give them? That they might not have a company or might be wanting to grow and develop one. What would be the number one piece of advice you'd tell them to prep them for leadership? Or
sure. If I go back, first and foremost is you're going to have to earn the respect and the trust of your staff, your colleagues, your customers, and everyone who works around you. The first piece of advice I give anybody in any role is whoever you're dealing with, whether it be a colleague, a staff member, a customer, or even a supplier, is to find a problem and fix it straight away. And if you can do that, you're showing somebody that you're real, that you're capable, that you've taken them seriously and their problem serious, and you're in a timely fashion, you've dealt with it. From there, the platform is yours to either fall off or grow.
Right.
In my opinion.
Okay, well there you heard it first. Find a problem and fix it, and then you'll gain a lot of, I guess, trust and traction immediately. Yeah.
Yep.
And if you were to go back and talk to your 20-year-old self,
yep.
what would be the bit of advice you'd give your 20-year-old self, Adrian?
First of all, buy lots of houses.
In Auckland, or
yeah, buy lots of houses. No, take your time. Be understanding. You think you know it all. You know, hang on to that confidence, but also obviously have your eyes and ears open. Listen to more experienced people who have been there, done that. We're still learning. We're always learning. We're going to be learning to the day we die. And if you don't learn that lesson right from the get-go and tame your enthusiasm and your confidence, then you're going to have a few issues along the way.
Great, and that's what you tell yourself. Speaking of young people, millennials, right? They get a bad rap. You've got a bunch of different people. You've got quite a few millennials in your team.
Sure.
Working with millennials, how do you find them? And sort of, what if a millennial's watching this now, someone sort of 32 or younger? So how do you find them, or what bit of advice would you give the millennials watching this today? Sure.
The biggest thing is our difference in work ethic between a millennial and someone of my generation.
Sure. What's the difference there?
I guess we're completely different generations. We grew up differently. We grew up playing on the street and riding our bikes and being smacked and whatever else. To us, that was normal.
Right.
So I'm not saying one's right or one's wrong. It's just different. Leaving school, they're even getting schooled different to how we got schooled.
Yeah.
We were educated in a way where we had to conform.
Yes.
Whereas these guys and girls are coming through where they've been opened up. Learn at your own pace, learn in your own environment, and et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So when we have people like that coming into business and companies now that are still run and owned by the previous generation, we have got different expectations to what you have. Yeah. And it's these expectation mismatches where we start blaming each other for, hey, you're useless, hey, you're a prick, So again, you got to communicate it. If you're not understanding it, you got to sit down and have a chat. But work ethic is a big one.
Right.
Being on time, please and thank you, your manners, all of those good things that are sort of starting to fade away.
Right.
You need to hang on to those.
Right. Okay, great. And overall, how would you rate millennials as a work generation for you? Because you've got sort of different generations. That's your advice, and that's what you see. But how do you rate them? I mean, are they still? Do you think New Zealand's in good hands, business hands?
Oh, of course they are. I mean, in any generation, you're going to get people who are below par, and the people who are above par, and people who come to you
Couldn't
with
agree more. Absolutely.
people who come to you with passion and drive and enthusiasm, and with them millennials in this day and age, the biggest thing that they bring to our company is a knowledge of how to work a computer.
Yeah, right.
You know, that's one of the biggest challenges for us slightly older people. So yeah, look, there's always going to be good and bad in every generation, and it's, again, you're in business, man, especially now with the difficulty of getting rid of somebody. If you get the wrong person, getting rid of them is not a bad term. You're freeing up their future. If this is just not going to work out, it's better off going off. But getting that right person right from the get-go, there's going to be lots of millennials that are awesome, and it's up to you to find those awesome ones.
Couldn't agree more. Well said. If you were to recommend one book to other business leaders, what would that book be?
A book that I would recommend. I'm not a book kind of a guy, Nick, to be honest, so I couldn't really answer that.
Okay, and what Buffett says, if there was one word to describe it, would be focus. What would be the one word to describe you, Adrian?
My passion to please.
Okay. You've got a lot of energy, you've got a lot of drive, right? You've got to come in every day and deal with all of the strain and the stresses that come with a position like yours. How do you maintain that energy and drive over the long term like you have?
Sure. It's funny because you say that and yet I don't feel that. Outside of work, I like my own space, and I like a very serene time to myself. So in the morning I get up, I have my 2 slices of toast, and I sit on my deck with a coffee and I look at the trees and the wind, and I have...
That's your centering time,
it really is. So I come to work, and every day I park my car, and as soon as I get out my door I turn on the drive and I turn on the energy, and I'm here for a reason, and I'm passionate about the industry that I'm in. I'm passionate about creating a successful, healthy company so all of our employees can feel safe, knowing that the company's solid and we're not going to go ping or anything silly like that. And I want to please the people who employ me. I'm here to do a job, and for me, making them happy makes me happy, makes my staff happy.
It's really great to hear that part of your energy comes from the fact that you want a job security for your team. And I just want to check that all staff members or any employees or team members out there that are watching us, every single business owner that I work with, they all want to make sure that your jobs are safe.
Absolutely.
The last thing, I guess, is if you had a closing word or a bit of advice rather than me ask a question. There's a whole lot of leaders out there. You can look in that camera and give them a bit of advice or anything you want to finish with. The floor's yours.
Sure. My advice is wholly and solely just treat everybody with respect, the way that you would want to be treated. Be open and honest in your communication, and really be true to yourself and who you are, so your staff can see that.
Adrian, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.